Raiders at Minnesota today on Night of the Shield. Episode 3, baby. Let's go. Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Night of the Shield. I am Jason Smith, a.k.a. The Knight. And today, man, I decided not to wear shades, man. It's like a rarity for me. I have them here. I just decided, you know what? I'm not going to wear them today. I'm just going to roll with it. So here we are. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be updated every time I drop another episode. And hit that like button for me. Let's continue to move up this algorithm. I would love to just thank everybody that's been watching the videos lately. It totally means a lot. And I just want to let everybody know and remind you that all proceeds from this channel, any monetization money that comes through this channel, goes to support my nonprofit organization, Independently Blind. Stay tuned for some footage. Either this week or next week will be coming out. I'm going to show you a little bit about what I do and see some of the kids that I work with, just to let you know how real it is, all right? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I know you're here to hear about thoughts and opinions about what happened there in Minnesota. I'm going to be honest. I thought it went fairly well. Let's be real about it. Number one, let's get this out of the open right now. You're going to get some biased stuff here. You're going to get some honesty and realness from an old guy that's been doing this for a little bit and has a different perspective these days on how he wants to break this down. When it comes from the defensive side of things, you know, that would be the glaring thing, right? Minnesota marched right up there, and thanks to Jacorian Bennett, they didn't get a touchdown or a field goal, and that worked out in our favor. And I just want everybody to understand how preseason works. You know, everybody expects too much from preseason sometimes, and I think everybody needs to think about it and remember that this is real live action. You got fans in the stands. You got cameras rolling around. This wasn't like the scrimmage we did early on against ourselves. This is something completely different. So it's fair to say that this was their first go at it. Not only was it their first go at it, it's not like they got a ton of reps, right? And in football, something that is so repetitive, especially from a defensive line perspective or in your secondary or even your linebackers, you got to develop some type of rhythm. So anybody that may think that they didn't see what they expected to see out of our defense, man, there's such a long season, and we're barely scratching the surface. These guys will get their legs under them. They'll start to really get used to the day in and day out rigmarole and really start to build that chemistry once again. And this is going to be a pretty solid defense. We got to let preseason take its course. Preseason is mostly about getting used to the game. And I like the fact that Antonio Pierce, for once, is actually playing our starters and giving them the opportunity to have that experience early. That way, week one, it's not such a shock. And more importantly, it's not such an excuse. The last few years, I've used that personally as an excuse that maybe these guys should have played in the preseason and got some warm-ups before going out there for real. Well, we're getting that this season, so that excuse is going to be off the table. And that's the biggest thing I'm taking away from it. As it pertains to losing the game, especially from a defensive standpoint, guys, don't put a lot of stock into whether or not we lost or how much we lost by or how odd it was from the punt to the protections to the giving up big plays. Look, man, those guys are fighting for a spot, and I wouldn't worry about so much what you saw at the end as what you see pretty much in the first half, in particular in this game, because that's when we tended to see the pieces that we want, or at least that Antonio Pierce and his staff expect to be on this football team and contributing on a week-to-week basis. So stay focused on that, and that was a victory. Now, don't get me wrong. The mission is to win every time we go out there. We need to build that competitive edge, and I believe we had that. We didn't hold on to it. It's a learning experience, but again, most of that came from people that may or may not even be on the football team, so I ain't stressing on it. Offensively, I know everybody wants to talk about the elephant in the room, and we will get to that, but I really thought that everything that I expected this could be, we saw glimpses of. I'm going to say that again. Everything I thought that this could be, we saw glimpses of. Meaning, don't necessarily think we saw exactly what this is going to be to a T. We just saw the potential of what it could be. Brock Bowers, Michael Mayers, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, all right, Christian Wilkinson, right, DJ Turner. We have weapons on this football team, guys. It's insane. And I talked about it. I think it was episode 2. and maybe even a little bit on episode 1. We've kind of touched base on it here. There's a lot of very talented football players on this football team that are going to be able to contribute in so many different ways. And the idea for these quarterbacks is to make sure that we get the ball into their hands. The biggest question is who outperformed who? Who was the better quarterback? And does that weigh into who should be our starter moving into week 1? My personal answer, no. And here's the thing. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I think if you're basing it off this Minnesota game, I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I know the biggest thing that people want to talk about is Aiden O'Connell getting tackled right there at the goal line, and we ended up with a field goal. But again, with a quarterback like Aiden O'Connell, the protection has to be in place. But before that, Aiden was on point. He managed the offense really well. No delay of games. He marched the ball right down there. He put us in position to have that. We just didn't finish, and I'm not going to hold it to him in week 1, very first drive of the season, and with, like I said, audience and cameras and all that jazz happening at once. That was the real dress rehearsal of the season, anyway, right? Be put in the same type of situation you will be in week 1. Not as close as we're going to get at this point. That's what we got to see. And I thought Aiden was great. Come in, guard Minshew. Minshew was fantastic too. 2 tutties. He really commanded the ball. He had the 1 delay a game. He showed his ability to get out of those types of situations and use his feet to make plays. Yeah. So where am I personally at when it comes to Minshew or O'Connell? Honestly, whatever the coaches decide at this point. I mean, we got 2 more games left. We got a little bit more camp left to see how this battle, continues and to see if anybody ends up kind of taking it over from a mental or physical perspective. But as of right now, what does Getsy want? What does Pierce want? Does he want the pocket passer or does he want the scrambler? What does he think is going to benefit this team the most, right? Does the selection go to the man who had it from the get-go? Does O'Connell win by default? I don't think that's the right selection if from that perspective, meaning, right? Like, you have to take everything into consideration, and that is between Antonio Pierce and his coaching staff. And at this point, what we saw, like again, in Minnesota, I'm really trying hard to do that Minnesota thing. I think I'm failing, but it's all right. I would be fine with either one. And here's the thing. I know Antonio Pierce made the comment, once we select our quarterback, that's our quarterback. And let me say this, Antonio, I know you ain't going to watch this video or this podcast, but let me just tell you, I respect that. But at the same time, you're having 2 guys playing very similar type of football as far as results go with 2 different styles of play. You have to identify what style of play fits the personality at this point of this football team. Unless one of these guys within the next 2 weeks take this whole thing to a whole nother level and show you something you can't turn away from, you, as the head coach, have to decide which one of their personalities and style of play fits the personality and style of the whole team. Both offensively and defensively, I think you got to go to your captains, the Max Crosbys of the world, the Devontae Adams, even though he's not at camp, Jacoby Myers. You got to go talk to these guys and really ask them, hey, which one is going to make the whole team better? Because that's the quarterback's job. Everything falls on the quarterback. Wins, losses, it always seems to go on the quarterback. So you want to make sure that your personality, the style you want to play on both sides of the ball, fits the captain, the leader of this football team, which 9 out of 10 times ends up being the quarterback of your football team. So it's a very, very big decision. But I think for what we have, because I know if I don't say it this way, I'll get blown up in the comment section. But for what we have available to us, primarily Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, this is what we're deciding it on. We're not deciding it on who we could have had, who we should have had, who we want. No, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew. You want the best. You want the person that's going to give us the best opportunity. And at this point, I believe both of them have showcased they could play at a level good enough to get the ball into the hands of the playmakers' hands and allow them to get them yak yards. Because that is the focal point, especially early on in the season. That's this offense. That's going to be this offense's personality. We need the guy that can consistently put the ball in the hands of the playmaker to make things happen. And when that starts to happen, it will open the door for these guys to take chances down the field. You saw Gardner Minshew do that tonight, throwing a deep one down to Trey Tucker, I believe it was. Okay? That's really my thoughts. You know, I almost came on Friday, Saturday morning. I almost came on and dropped an episode. I'm just really busy. I had an independently blind meeting this weekend. I had the kids over. We were doing a lot of motivational stuff. I'm working on so many different projects. I got my work. I got my 9 to 5, and I just didn't want to push something and force an episode out that I didn't have my thoughts fully calculated. That used to be me back in the day. If you guys have been around long enough, you know, I used to be that, you know, greedy YouTuber that just wants to just make content to make content. You're not going to get that here. Everything that I make is going to be strictly intentional. I want it to be intentional. I want it to be about what is happening currently, and I want to talk about from the best way that I can, the most unbiased way of talking about this football team, even though I'm a diehard fan and have been my whole life. So that's what we're trying to do here. So let's just go ahead and take a step back for a second and take a deep breath and just really give a final thought, put a bow on week 1 of the 2024 preseason, and just say, look, even though wins and losses don't matter, what matter is evaluating talent, and I think we can see what kind of talent really sits on this football team, right? Every team is going to have a question mark, a what if this guy gets hurt, if that guy gets hurt, who's up coming in, who's doing this and that. But from a starter perspective, and who wouldn't like to have 2 quarterbacks that are above average making things happen? And we'll have to let the season play out, but I think the Raiders are in a fairly good situation. They're in a fairly good situation to make a run at the playoffs, whether that's if they could put this team together to actually win the division or whether or not they're pushing for a wild card. I think the Raiders are putting themselves into that conversation, and it's early. That is a total fan biased perspective, by the way. Take it for what it is. I really liked what I saw, and it was purely based on potential. Okay, now moving forward, let's see. We gotta look for growth. We gotta look for consistency, right? Here we go. Here it comes. You ready? I haven't said it all year. Consistency and continuity builds good football teams. That's what's on the table right now. That's what's on the table right now. Everything right now, to me, is pretty much a lock. I can pretty much look on the defensive side of things, offensive side of things, and say, yep, I pretty much see what this team is going to be personnel-wise, with the exception of who's the number 1 quarterback and who's the number 2 quarterback. But either way, if the number 1 quarterback gets hurt or really goes off the rails, I like our option at number 2. And that's just where I'm at right now. And that's what we have to work with. So remember, not what we should have, not what we want to have, it's what we have. Make the best of what we have. Get the ball into the playmaker's hands. That's the motive. That's the mission. That's where we're at. Real quick one this week. I just wanted to get this out there to everybody. Much love. Keep in touch in the comment section. Give me your thoughts. Give me your opinions. It's okay to be biased. You don't need to be positive. You also don't need to be negative. Just be you. And until next time, stay Raider strong. Night out.